Good evening, everyone. Yes, the host and the man that are here to tell you all my 11th chapter of Pirates of the Caribbean, The Final Voyage. Are y'all ready? Sit back and relax, and let's get started. Chapter 11, Cave Massacre. Back inside the cave, Jack and Red walked for what seemed like a few minutes until they came upon a small clearing with a blue light shining. They both went inside, and as they did, what they saw was beyond anything they ever could imagine, even a surprise to Jack. The whole place was filled with glowworms all the way up to the top. There was sparkly crystal blue water and also sparkling flowers and weeds, seaweeds, and other plants like matter. Also there was a couple of crabs that were purple. And also there were a bit of little pools that resemble fountains. And every time they get close by, they sprout like an actual little fountain. Red was amazed the most, and then she looked through a shiny shell as she saw, and then she asked, "Jack, have you ever been in this section of the cave before?" But she didn't hear a reply from him. And as she asked again, there was still no reply. She looked back and went to go see what Jack was looking at, and then as she saw, there were tons of skeletons all over the place. And not only skeletons, there were also skulls and some soldier-like armor all over the place. And then Red grabbed Jack's hand, and there she said, "Maybe it's best if we keep going, right?" Clearing his throat, Jack replied, "Aye, let's keep going." But as they were about to leave, they were stopped by the tracks with their both amazement by the governor. His skin was bright red with burning flame all over. His left shoulder was dislocated, his right leg was broken, and there were a few soldiers behind him as well. Some of them were still burning and burnt. A lot lost their hair, burning clothes, busted faces, and so on. Wheezing in pain, the governor managed to speak up and it said, "Well, well, well." Then Red stood up and said, "How are you still alive? We saw you exploding on your ship." Then the governor replied, "Yes, that be true. But I managed to escape along with a few of my soldiers that you see behind me, but we suffered some minor injuries, as you can see." Jack looked at the governor's dislocated shoulder and his dangling foot, groaned in disgust, and said, "Define minor, because you look like a lot of pain to me. I mean, you and your men are such a horrid mess." Holding his anger, the governor replied, "Well, if it weren't for your sister, we wouldn't be in this situation. And you can forget about going to England to be hanged, miss, because I'm going to kill you right now. Prepare to fire." Doing as they were commanded, the soldiers loaded their pistols along with the governor's and were about to shoot, but before the governor could give the word, there was a devastating, loud growl. Everyone looked up at the top of the cave to see where it was coming from, but nobody could see a thing. And then there was a loud thud behind the governor and his soldiers. They all turned, and everyone looked up in horror, and in front of them was a Kraken. But the Kraken looked a little different than the last time Jack had remembered. The Kraken now has one orange yellowish eye, a few tentacles, and it was showing its mouth filled with both tentacles and sharp teeth. The Kraken roared and then attacked. It grabbed the soldiers as they were firing at it, and the Kraken grasped them in its tentacles and ate them. And the governor was just about to shoot Red until he also was caught by the Kraken. He was trying to reload as he was being hoisted up, but the Kraken was too quick, and then, since the governor was a huge fella, the Kraken ate him in half. He ate him head first, all the way to the waist, all there was left was the governor's legs. Both Jack and Red try not to puke as they look at the waste. And then the Kraken grabbed the waste and ate that as well. And just it was about to leave, Red turned away and puked. Her puking was so loud it grabbed the Kraken's attention. The Kraken growled as it looked at Jack and Red, and then it gave another look, a closer look, to Jack, and then it roared. Trying to hold his fear, Jack said, "Hello, beastie. Long time no see?" Without thinking for a second, the Kraken charged towards Jack and Red. Both of them ran and screamed in fear as they continued on running for seemed like minutes. Then they went into a little clearing on a different side of the cave, on the opposite direction that they came in earlier, went inside, and then they were sliding down, down, down. And as they made it to the end, they stumbled upon a darker part of the cave with a very long tide pool, and to both of their surprise, there were cabins and a half-broken sunken ship. Both Jack and Red sighed in relief, and Red said, "I think we lost it." Then they heard loud banging behind them. They both got up, took steps back, and the banging was starting to get louder and louder until finally a huge explosion happened as it was the Kraken that was following them and made it through. Both Jack and Red huddled together, yelled as the Kraken roared at them, and Jack shouted, "Run for it!" Meanwhile, on the different side of the cave, Angelica and her crew were arriving at a different cabin. As they went in, they came upon a volcanic-like structure filled with people shaped like rocks. Angelica looked as the volcano was boiling down like a little waterfall, and then there was an explosion close behind as there was a tiny mini volcano erupted. A piece of lava hit a zombie and his face was burning, but he didn't yell in pain, obviously because he was a zombie. And as he looked at Angelica, his face was burnt and all was showing was his skeleton. So he's a half zombie, half skeleton. Realizing they had not much time, Angelica decided to move on. But then, something stopped them in their tracks. On the other side of the lava pool, she spotted Davy Jones and his crew, along with Elizabeth and Karina. And Davy Jones spotted them too, and said, "Ahoy there!" Then Angelica replied the same way Davy Jones said, and Davy Jones replied back, I don't suppose you're looking for the Temple of Fortune?" Angelica answered back and said, "Aye, indeed I am." Davy Jones chuckled, and then he started to laugh, and then he said, "You're a captain, aren't you? In all my years, I have never seen a woman as a captain. And as far as I can tell, unfortunately, I'm going to beat you to the temple, and I'm going to get my wish." Starting to get angry, Angelica got close to the cliff and then shouted, "That's where you're wrong, Davy Jones. I am going to go to the one who will be making my wish first. And I'm going to bring my father back, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to destroy everything and everyone in the whole entire sea. And there's nothing, and not even you, can stop me." Then Davy Jones started to get angry, and then he said, "Not even me? Do you even know who I am? I am Davy Jones, the bringer of death. And now, I'm the one who's going to bring you death as soon as we get to that temple." Suddenly, there was an earthquake. Rocks and lava were spewing and falling all over the place. Everyone on both sides got away from the edge. And then, as they all looked up, another Kraken appeared. But this creature was different. It was truly a gigantic size that resembled an ancient sea god, Chthulu, and it got its sights on Angelica and her crew. Angelica ordered her crew to open fire, and as they did, it did absolutely no effect on the creature. It roared in anger and attacked. Angelica and her crew ran for her life as Davy Jones, Elizabeth, Karina, and the crew managed to slip behind the creature without being noticed. Davy Jones looked back as he saw that Angelica was looking at him. Then he smiled and laughed, and all of them ran ahead before her. Angelica roared in anger, and then she fired her pistol and it managed to hit the creature's eye. It roared in pain, and she ordered her crew to make a run for it. Meanwhile, Jack and Red continued on running away from the Kraken. Soon they started to realize that they were trapped. Red was worried, and then she asked Jack what they were going to do. Jack noticed there was boxes of dynamite, tons of them, close by, and they all led to one cabin. And then Jack noticed a windmill with sharp edges close to the cabin, all tangled up in chains. Jack made an idea. He looked at Red and then he said, "I got an idea, but I'm gonna need you to distract it." Red looked at Jack in surprise and then she said, "Me?" Then Jack grabbed her hands and then he said, "Trust me, I just need you to distract it while I set up the plan." And then Red started to notice what Jack's plan is, as there were also boxes of dynamite close to her side. And then she started to like the idea and she agreed to do it. Just as the Kraken nearly reached them, Red shouted, threw some rocks at it, was jeering at it, calling it names, and persuaded it to follow her. Luckily, Red had a head start, and the Kraken started to chase her. Jack climbed up the ladder that led into the highest, tallest, biggest cabin, and as he went inside, the whole place was filled with dynamite. Meanwhile, Angelica and her crew was still running from the chthulu-like creature, and it started to gain on them, and then managed to take one step ahead of them, managed to step in front of them, missed by a few inches away from Angelica, grabbed a few zombies, and ate them. All the debris that is causing the rocks and lava to fall apart were all heading in all different directions. And then there was one gigantic rock heading towards the creature. Angelica gave a sneer, grabbed her sword, and stabbed it on the creature's foot. And as the creature was roaring in pain, holding onto his foot, it stumbled backwards, tried to hold on into the cliff, and then it saw that the very big giant rock hit its face, and the creature was falling towards the lava. As everyone looked, the creature stumbled into the lava, and it was burned. But the little earthquake was starting to happen all over again, and continue on. Meanwhile, was starting to get tired of distracting the Kraken, and then Red shouted to Jack and said, "Oh Jack, what are you doing? Hurry up! I don't know how long I can keep this creature distracted." Missing by a few inches again, the Kraken missed grabbing Red, and Red went underneath the Kraken's tentacle-like feet, and then she grabbed to her side of the cabin and started to climb up the ladder. The Kraken spotted her and started to chase after her. Red nearly went up to her part of the cabin, but she lost her grip thanks to the Kraken, and then she started to fall down. Just when she thought her life was over, she was grabbed by the Kraken, and it pulled her close to his one big giant eye. She whimpered and hollered, wondering what the Kraken was going to do, and then the Kraken moved its tentacle, still holding on to Red, and started to move her towards its mouth. Red was yelling in fear and shouted out to Jack. Then all of a sudden, Jack heard Red calling him, and as he went outside on the deck of the cabin, he saw that the Kraken was going to eat her. Trying to react quickly, Jack grabbed his pistol and fired on the Kraken's tentacle-like horns. The Kraken roared in pain, looked up and saw Jack, and then it started to go exactly the way Jack is, still holding on to Red. Jack gave a little smile and he said, "Yes, that's it, come on." The Kraken started to climb up the cliffside, heading towards the cabin, and then, just as it was about to grab Jack, a huge, gigantic harpoon has pierced through its tentacle. Jack took a fall back thanks to the harpoon, nearly lit up the dynamite, and the Kraken was roaring in pain. The roar was so loud, both Jack and Red had to cover their ears, and it was starting to give a little earthquake. Debris was falling on top of them, falling in the cave. The Kraken looked to see where the harpoon was shot at, and on a different side of a different cabin, it was Gibbs. And then another giant harpoon was fired, and it hit another tentacle of the Kraken. That one was done by Will. And then another one, thanks to Henry. The other one, thanks to Pinter and Leggetti. And more giant harpoons were fired by Marty, Murtaugh, Leroy, Scrum, and the rest of the crew. Some of the harpoons missed the Kraken, but the 3 giant harpoons that hit the Kraken on its tentacle were still attached to the wall. But then the Kraken broke free from the harpoons, and then its broken tentacles started to grow back. Growling in anger, the Krakens now started to head into their direction. Jack was confused because the Kraken was going a different direction. Then he took his spyglass, gave a look, and saw that it was Gibbs and the others, and then he was disgusted as he saw Will and Henry. As he put his spyglass away, he muttered to himself and said, "What are these two doing here? They're trying to destroy my plan. This is my plan." And then Jack decided that his time is up. He lit up a piece of dynamite and threw it across the sky that ran on top of the Kraken's head. The Kraken felt it, and just as it was about to grab it, it exploded, and the Kraken's head was burning. It roared in pain once again as it stumbled and crash-landed onto the cliffside where Will, Henry Gibbs, and the others are, and all men all fell back. Then there was another dynamite that hit the Kraken and exploded, and then a third one, a fourth one, and a fifth one. All of them exploded, burning the Kraken, and then the Kraken looked to see where they were all coming from, and he saw that it was Jack throwing the dynamite. And then Jack started to make fun of the Kraken and said, "Hey, you witless, gutless, sorry excuse of a fish! Don't waste your time on them. Come and get me!" The Kraken gave one horrific roar and raced towards Jack's cabin. It climbed up and up and up, still holding Red in its tentacle, and poor Red was starting to lose some air, since she was trying to escape, and the grip of the Kraken was starting to get stronger. And then the Kraken's eye was looking inside Jack's cabin. Jack was nowhere to be found. And then it heard Jack shouted, "Oi, fish face!" The Kraken looked to its left and saw Jack was holding on onto a gigantic chain. And then he said to the Kraken, "My dear, big, giant beastly, today, this is a day that you remember as you almost caught Captain Jack Sparrow." Firing his pistol, the chain was loose and Jack was swinging all over the place, holding onto another chain and started to wrap around the Kraken, around the cabin. The very big, long, gigantic chains tangled the Kraken all over its tentacles and all over its gigantic body, and it lost its grip around Red, and Red, who lost conscious, was falling towards the ground. And then, with one heroic leap, Jack managed to grab Red just in time, grabbed to the chain again, and into the direction where Will, Henry, and Gibbs are. All of the men managed to grab Jack and Red just in time before they fall backwards, and then the Kraken was starting to break free of the chains. Jack grabbed a long rifle, which was inside the cabin earlier, and then he fired. The bullet was heading towards the cabin in slow motion, and the Kraken was getting coiling itself on the cave wall and was ready to jump towards the final cabin. And then, just before it did, 2 of the cabins exploded, and the Kraken was burning. All of its tentacles were gone as it was roaring in pain. The roaring got louder and louder, and the debris of the cave was starting to collapse again. And then, the giant spiky windmill was also starting to fall down and was heading towards the Kraken. Just as the tentacles of the Kraken were starting to regrow, the spiky windmill hit the Kraken from its brain through its mouth, and then the Kraken dropped dead. Jack was as surprised as everyone as the plan had worked. And then Red woke up thanks to Gibbs and Henry. As she was groaning in pain, put her hand on her head. She wondered what happened. Jack came to her with worry on his face and said, "Well, obviously my plan almost worked, and you got caught by the Kraken, and probably you got unconscious thanks to its slippery." But before he could finish, he was slapped by Red. Twice. And she was starting to get angry, and she said, "That was your plan? That was the most ridiculous, nosy plan that I ever seen. I thought you were an expert at things like this." And then Jack said, "Well, I am. And it was a good plan. Because it worked. Take a look over yonder." As Red looked, she saw that the Kraken was dead, windmill, all over its entire body. Then she gave a little gasp and said, "Oh, well, it still took you long enough. You could have gone a little long faster." The Gibbs button and he said, "Well, luckily, we gave Jack a little hand." Seeing Gibbs, Red got up and managed to hug him, Pintail, Rigetti, and the rest of the crew, and then she was going to hug Will and Henry, and then she started to realize who they are. "Hey, I know you two. You two were the men that I bumped into on Tortuga." Will said, "Aye, and we were going to help you up, but you refused." Red started to really realize who they are. And then she said, "Wait a minute. You're Will Turner, aren't you? And this is your son?" Will said yes, and then took out his hand towards her for a handshake. "Aye, that we are." Feeling a little awkward, Red took out her hand and shook his. Then Jack butted in and he said, "William Turner, last time I saw you, you planned a mutiny on my ship. Luckily I managed to pull you off before you could have done more damage." Trying not to get angry, Will said, "Well, the past is in the past, Jack. Right now, my son and I have different matters to attend to. Davy Jones is here, and he has Elizabeth and Karina, and he too is heading into the Temple of Fortune." Hearing the name Davy Jones, Jack quivered in disgust and said, "Yeah, I saw him earlier. He was trying to blow my ship." And then something came up to him, and then he said, "Wait a minute. You guys, all of you guys won the Queen Anne's revenge. How do you all manage to escape?" Marty came in, and then he said, "It was Will's idea. Since he's a blacksmith, he told us to lift up the hinges. And as we did, we managed to escape. Even though it took quite a while because of all the falling and tumbling and crashing." But Jack interrupted, and then he said, Yeah, I know already. You don't need to keep on explaining the details, Marty." Then Henry came in as well, and then he said, "I propose we make a truce. We should all put our differences aside for now, since you guys were not very on good terms back then. But right now, you must head into the temple, rescue my mother and Karina, and stop Davy Jones once and for all. What do you guys say?" Couldn't help but smile. Red said, "I agree. Right now we all have different matters to attend to. We could go rescue your mother and your girl, and luckily we're all here together, and we could stop Davy Jones once we go rescue them both and find the temple. So I'm with this young lad right here. What do you guys say?" Both looking at each other with stunned, awkward faces. Will and Jack look at each other close to the eye, and as they both made up their mind, they both said, "Aye." Jack gave his hand to Will, and then he said, "What do you say, Will Turner? One last final team up on one final adventure to stop all this madness before it's too late?" Couldn't help but smile, because Will did miss the old days, and they both shook hands. A good man handshake, and Will said, "Agree." Gibbs and the crew couldn't help but yelled in excitement as the whole crew are back together again. And then Scrum pointed out across the horizon and he said, "Hey, what's that?" Everyone looked, and all thanks to the Kraken with the debris, the Kraken made one giant clearing. On the outside was a waterfall. Jack got his spyglass, took a good look, but all he could see was just a clearing with the waterfall on the outside. He put it away, then he said, "It's kind of hard to see with that waterfall in the way." The Will cut in and said, "Well, I guess the only way to find out is to go in. Let's go, fellas." But Jack gave Will a push, and then he said, I'm the captain around here. You're just a blacksmith, remember? Let's go, men, and go find the temple." But then Will gave Jack a push, and then he said, "Maybe, but I'm also captain as well. Captain of the Flying Dutchman? Does that ring a bell?" Then Jack gave a grimy look at Will and said, "Maybe, but you lost the ship, thanks to Davy Jones, which makes you no longer captain. And besides, I'm the one who's leading this group because I know these men a lot more better than you do. So step aside, Will. Try not to hold his temper." Will took a deep breath, and then he agreed to let Jack lead the way. As everyone climbed down the cabin and started to head towards the waterfall, Red took a good look at Henry, and then she said, "That was a good speech what you did back there." And then Henry looked at Red, and then he said, "So, you're Jack Sparrow's sister. I didn't know he had a family." Red chuckled, and then she said, "Aye, there's a lot of things that you don't know about Jack." But Will couldn't help but butt in, and then he sternly replied, "Yeah, that's the problem." Trying to defend her brother, Red cut in, replied, "Well, if you get to know him better, if you're really good friends with him, you guys will actually be the best of mates." Will scoffed in disagreement and went on ahead to join Jack, and then Red couldn't help but look at Henry again. She said, "Still, that was a good move, kid." As they all came to the entrance of the waterfall, Jack grabbed his compass with Will, Red, and Henry by his side, and to all their amazement, even to Red and Will, the compass was pointing north. They all looked at the waterfall, and Red whispered, "So what are we going to do now?" And then Will replied and said, "We go inside." And that is the end of Pirates of the Caribbean, The Final Voyage, Chapter 11. What do you guys think of it so far? Do you like it? Please let me know in the comments down below. Like this video and many other videos I did before. And also to subscribe for more notifications of videos, shorts, and posts in the future. Hope you have a good, splendid day. God bless.